My name is Bessie Thompson, 72 years old, and a retired elementary school teacher. After my husband passed away, I decided to move in with my son James, his wife Tiffany, and my darling granddaughter Madison. At first, everything seemed perfect. Little did I know that beneath Tiffany's welcoming smile lurked a cruelty that would leave me starving in my own son's home. If you're watching this, where are you from? Take a second to like and subscribe before I tell you how I finally took back my life. I still remember the day Harold and I bought our little blue house in Springfield, Illinois, back in 1979. Harold taught high school mathematics, while I guided third graders through their multiplication tables at Jefferson Elementary. We never had much, but our home was filled with laughter and love. Harold was the type of husband who brought home wildflowers on random Tuesdays and stayed up late helping me grade papers. We raised our only son James there, watching him grow from a curious boy who took apart every appliance in the house to a brilliant young man who earned a full scholarship to study engineering. Our modest living room witnessed countless family game nights, holiday gatherings, and heartfelt conversations. The kitchen, with its outdated wallpaper, became the heart of our home, where I perfected my apple pie recipe that won the county fair 3 years running. When James moved to Seattle for a job at a prestigious tech company, we supported him, even though we missed him terribly. Then he met Tiffany Williams at a company event. She was a financial analyst with perfect blonde hair and ambition that matched his own. I remember how nervous I felt meeting her for the first time when they visited for Christmas 5 years ago. Harold whispered that she seemed a bit cold, but I defended her, saying she probably just needed time to warm up to us. 2 years ago, just after we celebrated our 45th anniversary, Harold complained of a headache during dinner. I thought nothing of it until he collapsed reaching for his water glass. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. A massive stroke took my Harold, my partner of nearly 50 years, in an instant. The following months passed in a blur of paperwork, condolences, and overwhelming loneliness. Our house suddenly felt cavernous without Harold shuffling around in his slippers or calling out the answers during Jeopardy! My retirement income barely covered the property taxes and utilities, and the maintenance started to become too much for me to handle alone. I tried to stay busy with my garden club and volunteering at the library, but returning to an empty house each evening weighed heavily on me. My friends Margaret and Louise suggested senior living communities, but the thought of leaving the home Harold and I built together broke my heart. Then came the phone call that changed everything. James asked if I would consider moving to Seattle to live with them. He mentioned their 4-bedroom house had plenty of space, and Madison would love having her grandmother around. It seemed like the perfect solution at the time. I listed our home with a local realtor who assured me it would sell quickly despite needing some updates. The housing market had cooled, and I ended up accepting an offer significantly below asking price. Still, it provided enough for me to pay off our remaining mortgage, cover moving expenses, and have a modest sum to contribute to James and Tiffany's household. The day I locked our front door for the final time, I sat in my car and wept. 40 years of memories stayed behind those walls as I drove toward what I hoped would be a new beginning. I packed only what would fit in my sedan. Family photo albums, Harold's watch collection, and a few treasured quilts made the journey west with me. The drive to Seattle took 3 days. I stopped each night at budget motels along the interstate, calling James to update my progress. He sounded genuinely excited to have me coming, and that gave me hope. Madison, 8 years old and full of energy, got on the phone to tell me she had helped decorate my room with pictures she had drawn. As I drove across the country, I imagined our new life together. I could help with Madison while James and Tiffany worked their demanding jobs. I would cook family dinners and share stories about James growing up. Perhaps I might even find a part-time volunteering position once I settled in. On the final stretch of highway leading into Seattle, I allowed myself to feel optimistic again. The pain of leaving our home and the grief of losing Harold might finally begin to heal in the embrace of family. At 72, I was ready for this new chapter, grateful for the chance to be useful and loved again. Little did I know that crossing the threshold of their beautiful house would mark the beginning of the most painful experience of my life. A trial that would test my will to survive and ultimately reveal the true character of those I trusted most. I arrived at James and Tiffany's house on a rainy Tuesday in April. Their home sat on a perfectly manicured lot in an upscale neighborhood of Bellevue, just outside Seattle. 2 stories of modern architecture with large windows and a 3-car garage. It was a far cry from our modest bungalow in Illinois. James met me in the driveway, wrapping me in a tight hug before helping with my luggage. Madison bolted out the front door, her brown pigtails bouncing as she ran toward me. My little peanut, all 8 years of boundless energy, nearly knocked me over with her embrace. She grabbed my hand and immediately began pulling me toward the house, chattering about the room they had prepared and all the things we would do together. Tiffany stood in the doorway, slim and perfectly put together in designer casual wear, despite it being a workday. Her smile seemed genuine as she welcomed me with a light hug and showed me to my room on the main floor. The guest suite was larger than the master bedroom in my old house. A queen-sized bed with an elegant gray comforter dominated the space. Madison had indeed decorated it with her artwork, colorful drawings taped carefully to the walls. There was even a small desk by the window overlooking their backyard. That first night, Tiffany prepared a wonderful dinner of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables. We toasted with wine to new beginnings, and I felt truly welcomed. James beamed across the table as Madison told me about her school projects and dance classes. The initial days were filled with settling in and establishing routines. I unpacked my belongings, arranging photos of Harold on the dresser. Tiffany gave me a tour of their state-of-the-art kitchen, with appliances I hardly knew how to use. James programmed their entertainment system so I could easily watch my favorite shows. Madison quickly became my shadow. After school, we would bake cookies using my old recipes read together on the patio, or take walks around the neighborhood. I treasured these moments, feeling useful again as I helped her with homework and listened to her stories. I tried to contribute to the household in meaningful ways. Each morning, I prepared breakfast, packed Madison's lunch, and tidied the kitchen. I learned to use their complicated washing machine to handle the laundry and kept common areas spotless. I wanted to show my appreciation for being welcomed into their home. Around the 2-week mark, I noticed the first hint that something wasn't quite right. I had prepared my famous lasagna, an old family recipe that James loved as a child. As we sat down to dinner, Tiffany took one bite before commenting that the sauce had too much salt and the noodles were overcooked. She pushed her plate away and made herself a salad instead. The look she gave me held something I couldn't quite place at the time. Not quite anger, but something colder. The next day, I overheard Tiffany on the phone while I was folding laundry in the adjacent room. Her voice was low but clear enough. "I never signed up to have another child to take care of," she was saying. "How long is she planning to stay anyway? James promised it would be temporary." My heart sank as I realized she was talking about me. Temporary. James had invited me to live with them permanently after selling my house. I had nowhere else to go. Later that week, Madison asked me to help with a family tree project for school. As we worked at the kitchen table, I shared stories about her great-grandparents and showed her old photographs. Tiffany walked in as Madison was giggling at a silly story about her father as a teenager. "Madison, I told you to finish that project yesterday," Tiffany said sharply. "And Bessie, we don't need to fill her head with outdated ideas about family. Society has evolved." I was stunned by her tone and the implication that my values were somehow harmful to my granddaughter. Madison looked between us with confusion before quietly packing up the project. That weekend, Tiffany's mother Diana came to visit. A tall, imposing woman with the same blonde hair as her daughter, though clearly from a bottle at her age. From the moment she arrived, Diana made it clear she saw me as an intruder. She referred to me as the house guest and corrected Madison when she called me Grandma. "This is your father's mother, dear," Diana said pointedly. "I'm your real grandmother." When James was home, Tiffany was the perfect daughter-in-law, always making sure I was included in conversations and activities. But I began to notice how her demeanor changed the moment he left for work or his frequent business trips. Those business trips became more common as James took on a new project that required travel to their company's offices in California. Each time he left, he called daily to check on us, asking specifically how I was adjusting. Tiffany always hovered nearby during these calls, her smile never reaching her eyes as she watched me assure my son that everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. I was beginning to feel the subtle weight of being unwelcome, of being tolerated rather than embraced. Despite the spacious house, I felt increasingly confined to my room, afraid of doing or saying something that might upset the delicate balance. I missed my friends back in Illinois. I missed the easy comfort of my own home, where I knew where everything belonged and had the freedom to use it. Here I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly apologizing for taking up space in a home that was supposed to be mine too. One night I heard Madison crying in her room after being scolded harshly by Tiffany for spilling juice on the carpet. I went to comfort her, but the moment Tiffany saw me in Madison's doorway, her expression hardened. "I can handle my daughter, Bessie," she said coldly. "Please don't undermine my parenting." I retreated to my room, the painful realization settling in that the warm welcome I had received was already wearing thin. What had started as a hopeful new chapter was beginning to feel like a terrible mistake. As weeks turned into months, the atmosphere in the house changed dramatically whenever James was away. Tiffany's initially subtle coldness evolved into open hostility. She stopped engaging me in conversation, entirely communicating only when absolutely necessary, and always with a curt tone. One morning in June, I came into the kitchen to make breakfast as usual, only to find a new padlock on the refrigerator. Confused, I knocked on Tiffany's home office door to ask about it. "Oh," that she said without looking up from her computer. "We've decided to control our food consumption better. For health reasons. The code is 4562. But please only take what you're supposed to." When I asked what I was supposed to take, she handed me a typed list of restricted portions. 1 egg per day, a half cup of milk, 2 slices of bread. The list went on, essentially limiting me to bare minimum calories. When I called James that evening, Tiffany stayed by my side, her presence a silent warning. I tried to casually mention the new food rules, but she quickly interjected. "James, your mom has been so worried about her cholesterol lately," she said smoothly. "I helped her create a heart-healthy meal plan. Isn't that right, Bessie?" Under her watchful glare, I agreed, unable to tell my son the truth. After the call, Tiffany changed the refrigerator code without telling me the new one. That same week, Tiffany began telling James that I was becoming forgetful. She would hide my reading glasses or move my belongings, then express exaggerated concern when I couldn't find them. James, worried about early signs of dementia, suggested I see a doctor. The physician found nothing wrong with my cognitive functions, much to Tiffany's poorly concealed disappointment. My isolation grew as Tiffany systematically cut me off from the outside world. She claimed there had been telephone solicitation issues and programmed the house phone to block my incoming calls. My cell phone mysteriously disappeared during a house cleaning. When my friend Louise from Illinois tried to visit while passing through Seattle, Tiffany told her I was ill and couldn't have visitors. Madison remained my only ally in the house, though even our time together became restricted. Tiffany enrolled her in numerous after-school activities that kept her away until dinner time. On weekends, there were always play dates and events scheduled outside the home. The moments we did share became precious. Madison would sneak into my room after her bedtime, bringing small treasures she'd found or drawings she'd made. She sensed something was wrong, but was too young to fully understand the adult dynamics at play. My heart broke one afternoon when I overheard Tiffany scolding Madison for spending too much time with me. "Grandmas are for occasional visits, not everyday life," she told my granddaughter coldly. "Besides, Grandma Bessie isn't doing well. She's confused a lot and might tell you things that aren't true." I was furious but felt powerless to confront her. This was her house, her rules. I had nowhere else to go, having sold my home, and used much of the proceeds to help with expenses here. One evening when James was away on business, I came downstairs after hearing unusual noises. In the living room, I discovered Tiffany intimately entwined with a man I didn't recognize. They sprang apart when they noticed me, and Tiffany's expression transformed from surprise to cold fury. "This is my colleague Kyle," she said, straightening her clothing. "We were discussing a work project. I think you're confused again, Bessie. You should go back to your room." The man looked uncomfortable but said nothing as I retreated upstairs. Later that night, Tiffany came to my room, her voice eerily calm. "What you think you saw tonight was a misunderstanding," she said. "If you mention anything to James, I'll make sure he knows how confused you've become. No one will believe you over me." The threat was clear. I was trapped in a home with a woman who was not only cruel, but unfaithful to my son. Yet I had no proof, no allies, and increasingly no options. As James' trips became longer and more frequent, the situation deteriorated further. Tiffany began entertaining friends at the house, introducing me as her husband's elderly mother, who's staying temporarily. She would laugh as she told them how I was constantly confused and forgetful, turning my genuine concerns into jokes for her social circle. Each time James called, Tiffany painted a picture of domestic harmony that couldn't have been further from the truth. She described family meals we never had and outings that never occurred. Meanwhile, I was becoming a prisoner in my son's home, increasingly isolated and afraid. By August, Tiffany's control over my food intake became outright starvation. The refrigerator remained locked and my meals were reduced to scraps. Sometimes she would place a plate with a single piece of dry toast and a small cup of applesauce outside my door. Other days, nothing came at all. The hunger was constant, a gnawing emptiness that made it difficult to sleep or think clearly. I lost weight rapidly, my clothes hanging loose on my shrinking frame. When James noticed during his brief visits home, Tiffany quickly explained it away. "Your mother's been following her diet so well," she told him proudly. "The doctor's very impressed with her progress." In reality, there was no diet, no doctor, just systematic starvation disguised as health concerns. One evening, desperate with hunger, I tried to open a can of soup I had hidden in my room. Tiffany appeared in my doorway watching me struggle with the manual can opener. My arthritic hands could barely manage. "That's not on your meal plan," she said, confiscating both the can and opener. "The doctor said we need to be strict about your diet. Besides, I was saving that soup for Madison's lunch tomorrow." She left me sitting on my bed, tears of frustration and hunger streaming down my face. Later that night, Madison snuck in with half a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in a napkin. My heart swelled with love for my brave granddaughter, even as it broke, knowing she had to secretly feed her own grandmother. The next day, Tiffany caught Madison bringing me an apple. She yanked the fruit from her daughter's hand and sent her to her room without dinner. I could hear my granddaughter's sobs through the wall. "You need to understand something," Bessie Tiffany hissed after Madison was gone. "This is my house. You exist here on my goodwill alone. If you continue to manipulate my daughter into breaking rules, there will be serious consequences." The food deprivation took a severe toll on my health. I became dizzy when standing and found it difficult to concentrate. My hair began falling out in clumps and bruises appeared on my arms and legs from even the slightest bump. During one of James' rare weekends home, I gathered my courage to tell him about the food situation. We were alone in the backyard, Tiffany having taken Madison to a friend's birthday party. "Son, I need to talk to you about something important." I began carefully. "I've been very hungry lately. The food in the house is kept locked away, and I'm not given enough to eat." James looked at me with confusion that quickly turned to concern, but not the kind I had hoped for. "Mom Tiffany told me about these delusions," he said gently. "You've been eating regular meals with the family every day. The doctor said these kinds of confabulations might happen as you age. Maybe we should increase your medication." My own son didn't believe me. Worse, he thought I was mentally ill. Tiffany had poisoned his mind so completely that my truth sounded like dementia to him. When our neighbor Eleanor noticed my weight loss and asked if everything was all right, Tiffany smoothly interjected. "Poor Bessie is on a special diet for her heart condition," she said with practiced concern. "And sometimes she forgets she's eaten. Isn't that right, Bessie?" With Tiffany standing there, her hand squeezing my arm in warning, I could only nod. Eleanor tried to maintain contact, occasionally bringing over baked goods or garden vegetables. Tiffany accepted these gifts with a smile, only to throw them away once Eleanor left. When Eleanor invited me to join her senior book club, Tiffany declined on my behalf, claiming I was too fragile for social engagements. I felt myself fading away physically and spiritually. My clothes hung from my frame, and my wedding ring slipped off my finger one day, disappearing down the bathroom drain before I could catch it. I wept at the loss, feeling as though I had lost Harold all over again. One night, after 2 days without food, I became so desperate I tried to pick the lock on the pantry, using techniques I'd seen in an old movie. Tiffany caught me, her face contorted with anger. "This is breaking and entering," she said coldly. "Maybe we need to look into a more structured environment for you. Somewhere with locks on the outside of the doors." That night I overheard her on the phone with James, describing how she'd caught me in a confused state, trying to break into the neighbor's house. Another lie to add to her growing collection. The next morning I found a typed note on my bed. It outlined the terms of my continued stay, including restricted access to the main house scheduled bathroom times, and a requirement to remain in my room when visitors were present. At the bottom, in Tiffany's perfect handwriting, was a simple threat. Violation of these terms will result in immediate relocation to a care facility. I had become a prisoner in my son's home, surviving on whatever scraps I could secretly obtain, isolated from the outside world, and powerless to change my situation. Or so I thought. On a rainy September morning, when I had gone nearly 48 hours without food, I collapsed in the hallway outside my room. Madison found me and screamed for her mother. Through blurred vision, I saw Tiffany rush in, phone in hand. Instead of calling an ambulance, she took photos of me lying helpless on the floor. "She's having another episode," Tiffany told Madison loudly, clearly documenting this for some future use. "Go to your room while I handle Grandma." Once Madison reluctantly left, Tiffany leaned down close to my face. "This is perfect," she whispered. "James will have to see you're too much for us to handle now." She helped me to my bed but brought no food or water. Later I heard her on the phone with James, her voice tearful as she described finding me wandering the house disoriented, claiming I had fallen when she was actively trying to help me back to bed. I laid in bed that entire day, too weak to stand. Madison snuck in after dinner with a dinner roll and some cheese shed hidden in her pocket. She looked frightened as she watched me devour the small offering. "Mommy says you're very sick and might have to go to a special hospital," she whispered. "Are you going to die, Grandma?" I hugged her tightly, assuring her I would be fine, even as I wondered if that was true. My body was failing from malnutrition, and my spirit was nearly broken. The next day, I happened to overhear a conversation between Tiffany and her mother Diana in the kitchen. I had dragged myself to the bathroom and paused when I heard my name mentioned. "The retirement home requires 60 days' notice," Diana was saying. "Can you keep the old bag here that long?" Tiffany sighed heavily. "I suppose I have to. James is still so sentimental about her. But I've been documenting her decline. All these confused episodes and falls. The doctor already suggested we consider memory care." "And the house money?" Diana asked. "Already invested," Tiffany replied smugly. "She signed everything over to us for caretaking expenses. She has no idea what that's worth now. Once she's in the facility, we can use her Social Security to cover the basic plan. Nothing fancy. They were discussing me like I was already gone, already dead. And the mention of house money hit me like a physical blow. When I sold my home, James had suggested I transfer the funds to their account for safekeeping and household expenses. I'd trustingly signed the papers he presented, grateful for his help. Now I realized those funds were never meant for my care, but for Tiffany's personal investments. They had stolen my life savings and planned to warehouse me in the cheapest facility they could find. The final betrayal came that weekend when James returned home. I gathered every ounce of strength to confront him with what I'd overheard about the retirement home and my money. We sat in my room, the first private conversation we'd had in months. I carefully explained the food restrictions, the isolation, the constant lies Tiffany told about my mental state. I told him about catching his wife with another man, and her threats afterward. As I spoke, I watched his expression change from concern to disbelief to something harder, colder. "Enough, Mom," he finally said, standing abruptly. "I know this has been a difficult adjustment for you, but these accusations are serious and completely unfounded. Tiffany has done nothing but accommodate you, adjust her life and schedule to care for you. But James? I pleaded. Look at me. I've lost 30 pounds since moving here. I'm starving. He shook his head, disappointment evident in his eyes. Mom, you wanted to lose weight for your heart health. Tiffany has been helping you with portion control just like the doctor recommended. What doctor? I cried. I've only seen a doctor once since I've been here. He sighed heavily. This paranoia is exactly why we're concerned. Tiffany thinks it's time we considered a place where you can get proper care. Professional care. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. My own son, my only child, the boy I'd raised with love and sacrifice couldn't or wouldn't see the truth. Tiffany had manipulated him so completely that he was willing to discard his own mother based on her lies. After he left, Tiffany came to my room, triumph gleaming in her eyes. He finally sees it, she said quietly. You're not well, Bessie. And soon you'll be somewhere more appropriate for someone in your condition. Madison cried when she came to say goodnight, sensing something was terribly wrong. I held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, wondering if this would be one of our last moments together. On my 73rd birthday the following week, no one remembered. No cards, no calls from old friends Tiffany might have intercepted, not even acknowledgement from my own son, who was away on another business trip. I sat alone in my room, staring out the window at the autumn rain, and allowed myself to truly feel the depth of my despair. I'd lost everything. My husband, my home, my independence, my health, and now the trust of my only child. Tiffany had systematically stripped me of everything that mattered, and I had no proof, no power, no recourse. That night alone and hungry in the dark, I realized I had reached the lowest point possible. And strangely, that knowledge gave me a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I'd survived the death of my beloved husband. I'd endured loss and grief. I was a fighter, a survivor, and it was time I started acting like one. In the darkness of my room with nothing left to lose, I made a decision. Tiffany Wilson would not break me. I would find a way to expose her cruelty and reclaim my life no matter what it took. The morning after my forgotten birthday, something changed inside me. A lifetime of being accommodating and non-confrontational gave way to a quiet, determined anger. If I was going to save myself, I needed evidence that even James couldn't deny. My first step was to document my physical condition. Using Madison's school ruler, I measured my wrist waist and wrote down my approximate weight based on what the doctor's scale had shown months earlier. I estimated I'd lost over 30 pounds. I found an old receipt in my purse and wrote these measurements on the back along with the date. My next challenge was establishing communication with the outside world. Tiffany monitored the house phone and had taken my cell phone months ago. I needed an ally, and 8-year-old Madison, while loving and willing, was too young for this burden. The opportunity came unexpectedly when Madison left her tablet in my room after we looked at pictures of animals together. The password was simple, her birth date, which Tiffany had mentioned during an earlier argument. Once inside, I discovered it had messaging capabilities. I quickly created a new email address Tiffany wouldn't recognize and sent a message to Eleanor, our neighbor, asking for help and explaining my situation. I deleted the message from the sent folder and cleared the browser history before Madison returned for her tablet. 2 days later, while Tiffany was driving Madison to dance class, I saw Eleanor in her garden. I opened my window and quietly called to her. She approached cautiously, standing beneath my window. "I got your message, Bessie," she said, her face grave. "Is it really that bad?" "Worse," I replied quickly, explaining the food deprivation, isolation, and plans to send me to a facility. Eleanor, a retired nurse, recognized the signs of malnutrition immediately. "I've been suspicious for months," she admitted. "The way she controls your movements, how you've lost so much weight. It's elder abuse, plain and simple." Eleanor promised to help. She began leaving small packages of food hidden in the hydrangea bushes near my window. During my restricted outdoor time, I would retrieve them and hide the provisions under my mattress. These small meals, protein bars and dried fruit, mostly gave me enough strength to continue planning. Using Madison's tablet during her school hours, I researched elder abuse laws in Washington state and found contact information for adult protective services. I also located a lawyer specializing in elder law, Patricia Gonzalez, and sent her a detailed email explaining my situation. Ms. Gonzalez responded within hours, expressing serious concern and offering to help. She explained that I needed documentation evidence of the abuse and financial exploitation. She warned that cases like mine often became my word against theirs, and without proof, it would be difficult to convince authorities to intervene, especially given Tiffany's careful construction of me as mentally unstable. I needed irrefutable evidence. An opportunity presented itself when Madison received a new phone for her birthday in October. Her old phone, while deactivated for calls, still worked on the house Wi-Fi. When she mentioned they were going to recycle it, I asked if I could have it to play the simple games on it. Madison, delighted I wanted to learn technology, sneaked it to me with the charger. That night I figured out how to use the voice recording function and tested its range. It worked perfectly. The next morning when Tiffany brought my meager breakfast, I had the phone recording in my pocket. "Here's your breakfast," she said coldly, placing a small plate with half a piece of toast and watery oatmeal on my bedside table. "This is all you're getting today, so make it last." "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked, making sure my voice was clear for the recording. "Why are you starving me?" Tiffany laughed, a chilling sound devoid of humor. "Because you shouldn't be here, Bessie. This is my house, my family. You were supposed to die with Harold, not become our burden. James is too weak to see it, but you're nothing but a parasite." Her words hurt, but I pressed on, needing more evidence. "What about my money from the house sale that was meant for my care?" Her smile was predatory. "Your money is gone, invested in my personal accounts. James never even saw most of it, and there's nothing you can do about it. No one will believe the ramblings of a confused old woman with dementia." After she left, I stopped the recording, hands shaking with a mixture of fear and triumph. I had her confession, but I needed more. Over the next 2 weeks, I managed to record several incriminating conversations. Tiffany threatening to have me committed if I didn't stay in my room during her dinner party. Tiffany telling Madison that Grandma was crazy and not to believe anything I said. Tiffany on the phone with her lover discussing their plans for when James was away. I documented everything on the phone, and in a journal I kept hidden beneath a loose floorboard I discovered under the bed. Eleanor continued to be my lifeline, providing food and updates from the outside world. She confirmed that my emails to the lawyer were received and that Ms. Gonzalez was building a case. One crucial piece of evidence came when Tiffany carelessly left financial documents on the kitchen table while taking a call. I quickly photographed them, with the phone capturing evidence of transfers from the account my house money had been deposited into straight to her personal investment accounts. My final recording was the most damning. Tiffany and her mother Diana were in the kitchen discussing the timeline for moving me to a care facility. "The place in Tacoma is perfect," Diana was saying. "Basic care, no frills, and they don't ask too many questions. They have an opening next month." "Perfect," Tiffany replied. "James is wearing down. I've convinced him she's a danger to herself and Madison. One more confused episode should do it." "So you'll keep starving her?" Diana asked, her tone matter of fact. "Of course," Tiffany said casually. "Malnutrition causes confusion. The doctor will see exactly what we want him to see, a frail, mentally declining old woman who needs institutional care. Then we can access her Social Security for the payments and be done with this charade." I sent all the recordings, photos, and journal entries to Ms. Gonzalez through the email account on Madison's old phone. The lawyer confirmed receipt and told me they had enough evidence to take action. She advised me to hold on just a little longer while they coordinated with Adult Protective Services and the police. The plan was set for the following weekend when James would be home. Ms. Gonzalez wanted him present to witness the intervention and see the evidence firsthand. All I had to do was survive until then. The night before the planned intervention, Tiffany seemed particularly smug as she brought me a dinner consisting of a single hard-boiled egg and 3 baby carrots. "Enjoy your dinner, Bessie," she said. "James and I have been discussing your care options. He'll be home tomorrow, and we have an important family meeting planned. I think you'll find the next chapter of your life will be much more structured." Little did she know that the family meeting would be nothing like she planned, and the next chapter of my life would indeed be different, but not in the way she expected. As I lay in bed that night, weak but resolute, I felt something I'd not experienced in months: hope. Tomorrow would bring either my salvation or my final defeat. Either way, I was done being a victim. The morning of the intervention dawned cold and clear. James had arrived home late the night before, and I heard him moving around in the kitchen as Tiffany prepared breakfast. Madison came to my room, her expression worried. "Mommy says we're having a family meeting about you today, Grandma," she whispered. "Are you going away?" I hugged her close, breathing in her sweet scent. "Not in the way they think, sweetheart. But everything is going to change today. No matter what happens or what you hear, remember that I love you very much." She left reluctantly when Tiffany called her for breakfast. I dressed carefully in my least baggy clothes, though nothing fit properly anymore after months of starvation. I brushed my thin hair and pinched my cheeks for color, wanting to appear as strong as possible for what was to come. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I heard Tiffany's voice, surprised and slightly annoyed, asking who was visiting so early. Then came multiple voices, official-sounding, requesting entry. From my partially open door, I could see uniformed police officers in the foyer. Behind them stood Eleanor Ms. Gonzalez and a woman who introduced herself as a caseworker from Adult Protective Services. James came down the hallway, confusion evident on his face. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Why are there police in my house?" Ms. Gonzalez stepped forward, introducing herself professionally. "Mr. Wilson, we have reason to believe your mother, Bessie Thompson, is the victim of elder abuse and financial exploitation occurring in this home. We have substantial evidence and are here to investigate and ensure her safety." Tiffany's face drained of color, but she quickly recovered her practiced mask of concern, sliding into place. "This is ridiculous," she said firmly. "My mother-in-law has dementia. She gets confused and makes up stories. Her doctor can confirm this." The APS caseworker, Angela Rivera, according to her identification badge, responded calmly. "We have spoken with her physician, Mrs. Wilson. He confirms that while he suggested dietary adjustments for heart health, he never diagnosed dementia, never prescribed the severe caloric restrictions you've imposed, and hasn't actually seen Mrs. Thompson in over 6 months, despite your claims of regular visits." Tiffany's carefully constructed facade began to crack. James looked between his wife and the officials, confusion giving way to concern. "Mom," he said, turning to me as I stood in my doorway. "What's happening?" Before I could answer, Ms. Gonzalez held up a tablet. "With your permission, Mr. Wilson, we would like to play some recordings your mother managed to make over the past few weeks. They document the treatment she's been receiving." For the next 15 minutes, the room was filled with Tiffany's voice, cold and cruel, threatening me, admitting to starving me, confessing to stealing my money, and planning to institutionalize me against my will. The recordings were crystal clear, leaving no room for denial or misinterpretation. As the final recording played, the one where Tiffany and Diana discussed the care facility in Tacoma and continued starvation, I watched my son's face transform. Shock gave way to horror, then to a rage I had never seen in him before. "Tiffany," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you haven't been starving my mother and stealing from her." Tiffany's mask shattered completely. She looked from the police to James to me, calculation and fury warring in her expression. "She's never belonged here," she finally spat. "This is my house, my life. I didn't sign up to care for your pathetic mother when I married you. She was supposed to be temporary, not move in forever." One of the officers stepped forward, speaking formally. "Mrs. Wilson, based on the evidence presented and our observations today, we are investigating charges of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and fraud. We need you to come with us to answer some questions." As they led Tiffany toward the door, she turned back, her beautiful face contorted with hatred. "You'll regret this, Bessie. All of you will." After she was gone, a female officer accompanied me to the kitchen, where Angela, the APS caseworker, gently asked me questions while taking photographs of my emaciated condition. They had me step on a scale James and Tiffany kept in their bathroom. I weighed 98 pounds, down from 130 when I had arrived 6 months earlier. James sat at the table, his head in his hands, listening as I recounted everything. The food restrictions, the isolation, the lies about my mental state, finding Tiffany with another man, the threats, the stolen money. With each revelation, he seemed to physically shrink, the weight of his unwitting complicity crushing him. Madison had been sent to a neighbor's house during the intervention, but when she returned and saw the commotion, she ran to my side, wrapping her arms around my thin frame. "Is Grandma staying?" she asked her father tearfully. James nodded, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. "Yes, sweetheart. Grandma is staying, and we're going to take much better care of her from now on." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Medical professionals came to the house to evaluate my condition. A nutritionist developed a refeeding plan to safely restore my health without overwhelming my compromised digestive system. A different lawyer hired by James began the process of investigating and recovering the stolen funds from my house sale. Tiffany was not permitted to return to the house pending the investigation. James filed for divorce within the week after discovering not only her treatment of me, but also extensive evidence of her ongoing affair with her colleague Kyle. The police investigation revealed more than we had imagined. Tiffany had been systematically stealing from James as well, diverting company bonuses and portions of his salary to secret accounts. She and Diana had been planning their scheme for over a year, waiting for the right moment to move me into the cheapest possible facility while continuing to collect and pocket my Social Security benefits. As my strength gradually returned, so did my voice and confidence. The frail, compliant woman who had allowed herself to be victimized was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced the darkest side of human nature and survived. 3 months have passed since that day, when everything changed. The physical recovery has been slower than I would have liked, but each day brings improvement. My weight has stabilized at 115 pounds, still thin for my frame, but no longer dangerously so. My hair has started growing back thicker, and the constant dizziness has finally subsided. The legal consequences for Tiffany have been substantial. She was charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, and several other crimes. Rather than face a trial where the recordings would be made public, she accepted a plea deal that included restitution, community service, and probation. Diana faces similar charges for her role in the scheme. Through the diligent work of our lawyers, we managed to recover almost 70% of the money from my house sale. Tiffany had invested it aggressively, and some was simply lost to bad decisions, but the court ordered the return of all recoverable funds. James has been on a difficult journey of his own, coming to terms with his failure to protect me and his blindness to Tiffany's true nature. Our relationship has required careful rebuilding, each of us learning to trust again in different ways. The counselor we see together has helped us navigate these complex emotions, giving us tools to communicate honestly about the hurt and betrayal we both experienced, albeit differently. Madison has been remarkably resilient throughout the ordeal. Children have an amazing capacity to adapt, and with the toxic presence gone from our home, she has blossomed. She still occasionally asks about her mother, but the questions come less frequently now. The child psychologist assures us this is normal, and that Madison is processing the changes in healthy ways. James made the decision to move us to a new home, away from the memories of what happened in that beautiful house that had become my prison. Our new place is smaller, but warmer somehow, with a guest suite for me that has its own small kitchenette and sitting area, providing me with independence while keeping me connected to family. I found purpose again through volunteer work with a local organization that assists elderly victims of abuse. My experience, though painful, has given me insight that helps others recognize warning signs and seek help before situations become as dire as mine did. The educational workshops I help facilitate for family members, caregivers, and seniors themselves have become a passion that gets me out of bed each morning with renewed energy. Eleanor remains a dear friend, visiting often, and joining me for weekly walks that gradually increase in distance as my strength returns. She introduced me to her book club, where I found a circle of vibrant, engaging women who have welcomed me warmly. The most profound change, however, has been internal. I've learned that age doesn't diminish my worth or right to dignity. I've discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed, and a capacity for forgiveness that surprises even me. Yes, forgiveness. Not for Tiffany or Diana, whose actions were calculated and cruel, but for myself and for James. I've forgiven myself for ignoring the early warning signs, for allowing my independence to be stripped away increment by increment. I've forgiven James for his blindness, recognizing that love can sometimes create the deepest blind spots. I think often of Harold during quiet moments. How heartbroken he would have been to see what happened, but also how proud of the strength I found. In some ways, I feel closer to him now than in the early days of grief. Perhaps because I've experienced a different kind of loss and survival since then, one that has deepened my understanding of what truly matters. Last week, James helped me start a small container garden on my private patio. As we pressed tiny seeds into rich soil, I thought about how growth often requires darkness before the push toward light. My experience was the darkness, the soil that initially felt like burial, but ultimately nourished new growth. Madison joins me each morning to water these seedlings, our small ritual of nurturing and patience. Yesterday, she spotted the first green sprout pushing through the soil and called out with excitement. "Look, Grandma! It's alive!" she exclaimed, her face alight with wonder. "Yes, sweetheart," I replied, feeling the truth of the words in my bones. Life finds a way even after the harshest seasons. As I reflect on the journey from victim to survivor to advocate, I'm reminded that our worth isn't determined by how others treat us, but by how we respond to that treatment. Tiffany tried to diminish me, to literally and figuratively shrink me until I disappeared. Instead, I grew in ways I never could have imagined. If you're watching this and experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation, please know that you deserve better. Your age does not make you less valuable or your needs less important. Reach out to trusted friends, neighbors, or local agencies. Document everything. Most importantly, never surrender your dignity or your right to be treated with basic human decency. The path to healing isn't quick or easy. There are still days when unexpected noises make me jump, when I find myself hoarding food in my room, despite the fully stocked refrigerator I now have unrestricted access to. Trauma leaves imprints that fade slowly, like watermarks on fine paper. But each day brings new strength, new joy, and new opportunities to reclaim pieces of myself that were nearly lost. Madison and I bake cookies every Sunday, reviving a tradition from those early days. James and I have lunch alone once a week, rebuilding our relationship conversation by conversation. I am 73 years old, and for the first time in my life, I truly understand that my story isn't over, that perhaps the most meaningful chapters are still being written. Age has given me perspective that no younger person can fully grasp, a hard-won wisdom that now serves as my gift to others. Have you ever experienced elder abuse or known someone who has? What signs do you think are most important to watch for? Please like, subscribe, and share this video to raise awareness about elder abuse and help others recognize the warning signs before situations become dangerous. Your comment might help someone who is currently suffering in silence find the courage to speak up. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that it's never too late to reclaim your power and your voice.